and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network, and today's topic is peace. But before we get started, let's take a moment to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose, hold it, and imagine crystal clear, beautiful, pure oxygen coursing into your lungs, into your bloodstream, into your cells, through your organs, and enlivening and revitalizing your body and your being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension in your shoulders, your neck, your back, your hips. And let's take another deep breath in through your nose. Hold it. And now imagine sparkling white light just coursing through the molecules in your whole body and beyond, connecting you with the universe. And now let's just gently press our palms together, really softly. Rub your fingers against your palms. Feel the tingling and the tickling in your fingers and the tickling in your palms and how delicious that is. And bring yourselves present right here, right now. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So thank you all for being here. I so appreciate being able to share this time with you. Today I'm going to talk about peace because yesterday I had a really interesting conversation with one of my clients, and it was very thought provoking, actually, because she was saying that she was experiencing a place of peace and calm, actually, and then asked the question if it was calm or numbness. And good morning, Dido. So glad you're here. We're talking about peace this morning. And I had an encounter with a client where they were experiencing the calmness. And then they questioned whether this calmness was actually a numbness. And it led me to start thinking about what is a sense of peace? What is a feeling of calm or tranquility or serenity? And what differentiates it from numbness? And I think I'm excited to talk about this with you guys. I'm wondering if you make a distinction, like how do you know that you're calm versus that you're numb? Because when you're not used to being calm, when you're used to being in a state of anxiety or upset, when there's a calm, it's maybe a lack of stimulation. Maybe there's a quietude about it that is not stimulating and therefore could feel like numbness. And as I think further about it, I wonder if love is part of the presence of peace and the experience of peace, like a connection, an interconnection to oneself, to one's inner vitality and presence and joy. I'm not sure that peacefulness necessarily connects with the experience of joy or even a conscious awareness of love. I'm wondering what you guys think. It's such an interesting inquiry to me because here's somebody who has had a lot of deep emotional experience, deep emotional disruption, often a lot of emotional pain. And here, when there was a sense of calm, it was kind of like, wow, what do I do with this? I'm waiting for it to pass. I'm afraid it's going to pass. I'm afraid it won't stay. There were conversations overlaid with this sense of peace or calm that had some anxiety to it, and also just questioning what is this? And it made me think about how we create drama in our lives. And I'm wondering if drama is its own payoff, in that it allows us to feel stuff, to feel anxiety, to feel exhilaration, to feel excitement, to feel anger, to feel jealousy, to feel resentment, to feel joy, to feel, to feel. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are on this. Share with me to see if there have been situations where life has been going great and things have been calm and you've been peaceful, and you find yourself creating a circumstance with drama, or creating drama just for the uh, adrenaline hit, or just for the change of pace, because the peacefulness, maybe you found it after a point to be boring. And I'm wondering how all this fits together, because so many of us say we just want some peace, we would just want some peace and quiet. And with COVID, we've had an opportunity to quiet a lot of the pace of our day, of our lives. In many situations, lots of us are busier than we used to be before COVID, but we've had more opportunity perhaps to cultivate some of this inner quiet, and potentially some inner peace. And with the lessened frenzy of the world, and less to go and do outside, I know that so many of us have experienced boredom. And I wonder if the emotional dynamic happens in the same way. Do you find yourself getting bored when things are going well? Do you find yourself, when you're feeling peaceful, do you find yourself looking for ways to create, consciously or unconsciously, to create greater emotional highs and lows? Because what this person experienced in a core connection session that we did, was that there was an image of these waves, and there was anxiety and upset when those waves were there. And as they were observing the waves became less and less, and smoother and smoother. And that was what they were identifying as calm. And I think that that's actually the case. When we experience calm or peacefulness in our lives, then it is a lack of, or a reduction of, the highs and the lows, and evening out of the highs and the lows. And when we talk about balance, we're talking about an easing of the differential between the highs and the lows, bringing things more to a constancy. So please give me some feedback here. I'm curious about whether you experience the calm in your life, and if it's something that can generate boredom, if you've ever had an experience where life has been so calm that it just started making you crazy. And you hear about kids say, I'm going to go get into some trouble, I'm going to go look for some trouble. Why would we do that? Why would we create disruption? And I'm inclined to think that the feeling of feeling alive is tied in many respects to the highs and the lows. Now, if we were able to find a place of peacefulness, that where we were really truly connected to presence, then that's a whole different story, I think. If we could find a place of peacefulness where we connect to the beauty and the magic of life and our lives in particular, and the surroundings that we are in, to find the beauty in those surroundings, that can generate a sense of peace, and that can generate a sense of wonder, and those could coexist, I believe, and a sense of love and presence. But without that, the serenity or the peacefulness might be something that our addiction to highs and lows would would be very challenging, would get old. And I wonder what it would be to choose peace in our interactions with others. And when I'm saying choose peace, if you're angry, I'm not saying to go in and deny your anger or um, resist it, but I'm wondering where the vantage point is that we could make a transition, that we could shift our consciousness, our awareness from that anger to a desire and a commitment to peace, like to remembering that we have that place of peace and connection and love available to us in those moments. Or do we enjoy the highs of that moment? And Jeanette Raggett, thank you so much for responding. Jeanette says the lows are third dimensional. So thank you for bringing that into the conversation, Jeanette, because we're talking about creating a transition from 3D to 5D, essentially. And in the 5D realm, there's more of uh, it's a higher vibration, it's a higher frequency. And that's really what this conversation is about. Dido says, when we're connected to our eternal essence and presence, peace feels expansive and blissful, like when seeing a beautiful sunset. Thank you for that, Dido. I agree that when we are connected to presence, peace is blissful, it is joyful, it is love, it is presence and awe. And when we are in 3D, um, which is this world of drama and the next adrenaline hit and excitement and tears and laughter and uh, I think that tears and laughter and joy can exist do exist in 5D, but they're generated from a very different place, a very different frequency. And what I'm looking at here is this transitional place, because I'm part of an organization or a group called the Sign Network, and that's, sorry about the notifications here. I'm not sure how to turn them off. The Sign Network, SINE, you can check them out on Facebook. They are uh, in the very beginning of September kicking off the Path to Peace, and the declaration is peace on earth by 2030. And so I was looking at what that is, and what brought this all about, as I said, is a conversation with a client where they were wondering if the calmness they were experiencing was numbness. And I was looking at how to be able to bring them into this experience of calmness and peace that isn't numbness, but that is that blissful presence. And it's like they're on the precipice of the dimensional shift. And it's just such a fascinating, it, I have to say the question took me by surprise when they said, is it calmness or is it numbness? And I see where it could be experienced initially as where calmness or peace could be experienced as numbness. And I'm curious for you guys how to presence yourself to that blissful state of peace, because I think it's from a place of peace that we do gain access to our hearts and to the blissful capacity that we have when we are deeply connected to that essence, that essential self, that eternal presence, as Dido so beautifully put it. So, moving from 3D to 5D, I imagine that there are many dimensions to our emotional experience that we get to redefine. And so in 3D, we create the drama. It's not just the lows, but the highs, even. So many of the highs that we experience in 3D, as well as the lows, are tied to outward circumstance. And maybe this is the distinction, is that in 3D, when we disconnect from outward circumstance as the thing that determines our well-being, perhaps there's a transitional place of emptiness. And maybe that's what this person was experiencing. Maybe she was experiencing a sense of a void, not as lacking, but like this void, this ever present, ever populated void that uh, really was all possibility, perhaps, but without manifestation. So there wasn't an emotion that she could identify in it. Maybe she experienced it as an emptiness, and that's perhaps why she thought it might be numbness that she was feeling. I wonder. And I imagine also that being present to that emptiness, moving into that emptiness and expanding into that emptiness is perhaps where the 5D emotions and experiences emerge, rather than being fearful of the emptiness, to be embracing it and and expanding into it. So what are your thoughts on this? I'm so curious, because there's a lot of talk about moving from 3D to 5D, but not a whole lot of instructions. I haven't really encountered much in the way of instructions. And my sense of it is that it's through presencing ourselves more deeply to that transcendent essence that we are in our core, perhaps through the breath, through meditation, through deliberately generating the experience of emotion without the provocation of circumstance. So as we connect internally, all of our emotions are generated internally. And what we can do is to generate a feeling of love from nothing, from the pure desire to create it, the pure will to generate those emotions and those frequencies. We then get to elevate ourselves, and perhaps it's through practice of these experiences that we enculturate and acclimate ourselves to these other levels of frequency. So I am fascinated by this new inquiry. I really hadn't considered it previous to the conversation yesterday. And I'm looking at how we are so habituated to particular emotions and experiences. And for instance, depression is a habit that we we become acclimated to. It's a physiological habit, it's a mental habit, it's an emotional habit that we that we become acclimated to over time. um, I know it was a habit and a pattern that I was very much at the effect of for very much of my life. And then when all of a sudden that, if it were to disappear, then the question is, who am I? What am I? How am I to function? Dido says, during high stress, we can go to fight, flight, or freeze as automatic responses. The freeze is like numbing and feels, at least to me, like those times during an accident when time slows right down like slow mo. But then after the crisis, I've felt really drained. Interesting. So in the freeze state is when um, you're saying the freeze is like numbing, and when time slows down in an accident, for instance. Well, interesting, because when time slows down, that's a heightened sense of presence. That's a heightened awareness that we rarely have access to. And I think it's really interesting that you're correlating that with the freeze state, because, or with numbing, because maybe there's a detachment. And I think that that's also something to be wondering. I'm wondering if this place of peace is also a certain degree of detachment, because ultimately a place of peace, I imagine that there's a way to be in that place of peace that is unshakable and is detached from the circumstances, detached from the reactivity to the circumstances. So I'm wondering if this place of peace is also a place of detachment. I think I said that actually earlier about being detached from circumstance, externalities, to maintain this sense of constancy. But I'm very interested, Dido, about what you said here about the when time slows down and slow motion. And it doesn't surprise me after, well, in times of crisis, part of what initiates that slow motion, I think, is a super flow of adrenaline, and it's really normal afterwards to feel drained because you've had this surge of energy, and your body needs to recover from that in the aftermath. um, this is so fascinating, really. I'm very, very interested to explore this with my client, to find out more about their experience, if it was an experience of emptiness, if it was an experience of detachment, if it was an experience of numbness, like to explore further and how to make the distinction to determine, is this peace and it's just so unfamiliar that it feels numb because I don't have all these other familiar emotions, or is this not peace? Is it something else? Is it even maybe a transition state on the way to peace? It's a very, very interesting existential question. Just because I'm such a nerd, I love looking at what the dynamics are of our awareness and our consciousness, and how our physicality and physiology and emotions and intention all play into that. Dido says, I think freeze is adrenaline based in the face of danger and hypervigilance or hyperpresence. Yes, I agree. I agree. And that state of greater awareness, I think, is available to us as we become more present, that we are. I've heard about people in altered states where time slows down. In fact, I've told this story before, but I just love this story. My nephew, when my nephews were growing up, I was always sharing things about healing and crystals and energy work and hands-on healing and stuff with them. And one of my nephews was at camp, and a friend of his got burned really badly on his leg. And my nephew decided to try healing, and he held his hands above this person's leg and just really got present. And in that presence, I don't know necessarily whether he had a conscious awareness of time slowing down, but what he said is that he could hear the ants walking on the grass, and he was that tuned in, he was that present, that aware of everything that was going on around him. And he he and his friends witnessed this injury, this deep burn healing before their eyes. And I I dream of accessing that level of awareness and that level of consciousness and that level of presence. So it's interesting that that's sort of what can happen when we are in an emergency situation and the adrenaline kicks in there, and then we become hyper aware. And it's very draining in those states. I don't know that my nephew was drained or not drained after this experience, but uh, I just find it so fascinating to follow, trace, explore these different dimensions of awareness that are available to us, and what it takes to access those states in a conscious way. This has been a lifelong fascination for me, and I don't anticipate that it's going to end anytime soon. I just this is these kinds of questions are questions that are the most stimulating and fascinating to me of anything in life. So I don't know if you share that with me, but again, I told you I'm a nerd, and I really appreciate your engagement with me this morning to start looking at what is it when our lives change as we're evolving and our emotional environment changes, I've noticed that in my life, the amount of drama in my life has reduced a millionfold as I've become more aware and awake. Dido says, "Isn't it amazing and wonderful that we are wired for transcendent peace?" That is such a great revelation. It's such a wonderful thing for people to know about ourselves, that we are wired for transcendent peace and we have the capacity for it. And it's just a matter of untangling the wires, I think, that keep us separate from it. And what I notice is that as we elevate our awareness and our consciousness, the drama reduces in our lives profoundly. And as we go back to what we were talking about before, the waves become ripples and more gentle and more peaceful as an overall theme. So, anyway, I want to say thank you so much for engaging in this conversation with me. It's been, I've enjoyed it. I hope you have too. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and we go live every weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Facebook page for Enlightened World Network. And I invite you to check out the other wonderful, wonderful programming on Enlightened World Network, heart centered, uh, transcendent, and delicious. So until tomorrow, I hope I'll see you back here again. And once again, thanks so much for being here with me. Lots of love, lots of compassion, and a wonderful day to you.